Welcome to In the Know. I'm your host, Dan Reith. We continue with our segments on Meet the Candidate for our upcoming June 2nd provincial election. This episode, we are visiting with Andy Kroeker, the NDP candidate for Elgin-Middlesex-London. Andy, welcome to In the Know.
Thanks, Dan. Nice to be here.
So let's start with perhaps the obvious question. Why have you decided to give up your role in healthcare to run for public office?
Well, I guess what I've seen over the past 2 years with COVID is that we have a lot to learn in terms of taking care of our most vulnerable people in Elgin and across Ontario. We saw during COVID that people without a lot of resources did not fare as well during COVID. And so this inequity is something I see every day in my work at the West Elgin Community Health Centre. And so we've always tried to work for people who have less. And to me, the fact that a lot of people are just wanting to move on and pretend COVID never happened, rather than learning lessons from it, is something that is troubling to me. We need to have a new social contract about how we in government, if I'm elected, to take care of our most vulnerable people.
What are you hearing at the door when you're out door knocking? What are prospective voters saying to you? What are you hearing? What's the message?
Well, there's a couple of messages. One that's a bit disconcerting is the number of people who say they're not going to bother to vote. They've given up. They feel that the two major parties just go back and forth and they promise things and they never deliver. So trying to convince people that voting is really important. And so the other thing is obviously concerns about affordability and healthcare. So the price of a house in Elgin has just gone up dramatically. So I work in West Lorne, and 3 years ago, you couldn't sell a house, but now you can't buy a house, right? And it's just become unaffordable for people to be able to buy and live in a house. And the challenges with homelessness in West Lorne in our area are things that have come out of the woodwork over the past few years. So I think affordability is a challenge. People telling me about their kids are living at home with them because they can't afford a place of their own. And certainly I know last year we commissioned a study that identified that affordable rental housing is the biggest challenge across Elgin. And so what are we going to do both municipally and at the provincial level to help build more affordable housing?
Let's talk about that as we get into the platform for the NDP party. When we talk about making housing affordable, one of the things that really stands out, and so aligns also with the Liberal platform, is bringing back rent controls. And I'm curious as to how the NDP party sees this as a mechanism to help, because there are many studies out there that demonstrate that rent controls fail. They are not a long-term fix. When it's been tried in the past, it's failed. It ends up often reducing available housing stock for rent. And it doesn't resolve the underlying issues that have resulted in high costs of rent, which is a lack of supply. So how is the NDP in 2022 going to solve the affordability problem by bringing back rent controls, effectively a proven failed policy?
Well, I think rent controls are only one aspect of it. I think you hit the nail on the head, right? There's supply issues and there are demand issues. And one of the challenges right now is we haven't been building enough housing units over the past 30 years. And that holds true in Elgin as well. So one of the things we're planning on is building 100,000 additional units of affordable housing. We're also planning on topping up. We know some people can't even afford the places they're living in. So providing support to up to 300,000 people who can barely make their rent payments as it stands right now. So we're also looking at changing some of the zoning regulations provincially, so that will allow developers to build affordable housing. So whether it's duplexes, triplexes, or multi-dwelling buildings that they haven't had the financial incentives to build, and that has been one of the reasons why they focused solely on building single-family homes. We know we need to build about 1 million homes over the next 10 years. And so we also need to help support that.
Think that's sufficient? Is that something that's really going to work for Elgin-Middlesex-London?
Well, I think that there's also the need to, as I said, we're going to be refurbishing 260,000 current. Where I work in West Lorne, there's a building across the street that's run by social services, and they would be able to tell you that a lot of their stock is in need of additional support. So I think that that's one facet of the solution to affordable housing. We're also planning on bringing in some of the policies that the provincial NDP government in BC has done with respect to housing. So working on speculator taxes and working on reduce some of the renovictions and speculation that has happened. I know, like I said earlier, we've seen people in West Lorne and Rodney who've lived in their homes for 20 and 30 years, and their homes are being sold right out from underneath them. And then they're coming to my rural homelessness system navigator without a place to live. So we know things need to change, and we're hoping that we can show that we're wanting to support people through that change.
Beyond housing, how else is the NDP going to make life more affordable for Ontarians? If I were to vote NDP, how are you going to make my grocery bill lower, my gas lower, my home heating lower, my electricity, which is out of sight?
Mm-hmm.
How are you going to make that better for me? And by me, I don't mean me, but me as a voter.
I guess one of the things we are proposing to do, though, is we're seeing that that oil companies and grocery stores are earning record profits these days. And so what we're proposing is that it's time for those larger corporations to step up and pay their fair share of taxes. For the past 40 years, we've been cutting taxes and assuming that was benefits were going to trickle down to everybody, but that hasn't happened. So it's time to redistribute some of those excess taxes from the highest earners and the highest corporations to help. Now, with respect to the individual at the local level, we are talking about having the Ontario Energy Board look to see what they can do with respect to regulating gas prices at the pump. The income for people who are the most marginalized in our society. So we're proposing right away that people who receive Ontario Disability Support Program or Ontario Works, so ODSP or OW, get an immediate 20% increase to their rates. And we will be working over our first term to increase their income to a livable wage, to give them some dignity, to at least give them the opportunity to at least be able to afford rent and food and other necessities. We're also going to be, as of October 1st, increasing the minimum wage to $16 an hour for, again, the working poor who have struggled through this. And we are going to index that going up $1 a year, starting May 1st of next year, up to $20 an hour. So again, the people who are most marginalized, who are living in poverty, we're saying they're the ones who are impacted the most, and not to dismiss others, but we're going to start with them and try to help them who are suffering the most. We know that one of the other big challenges for a lot of people is the cost of childcare. And so we know that this government was the last one to implement the $10 or to sign the agreement for the $10D childcare. And we're not quite sure what the timeline is for that. So we are hoping that we will accelerate that timeline and also work at reducing costs before and after care. A couple of other things that we're trying to find ways to put money back in people's pockets. One of the most exciting things in the platform is putting mental health care under OHIP. So this will allow people who currently are not getting the mental health care they need or the addictions care they need to get the care with their OHIP card as opposed to their credit card. So we know a lot of people in St. Thomas and in Elgin have struggled with mental health and addictions. And we're saying that those people need support. And we are saying that we are going to give them that support and make sure that they don't have to pay for it. We're also bringing forward accelerating the dental care program that the federal government is proposing. And we're also proposing to launch pharmacare in Ontario. So there's been a lot of talk about that. We know that a lot of people show up in West Lorne at my clinic. They get a prescription, they can't afford the drugs that are being prescribed, or they show up at the emergency department at St. Thomas Elgin General and they get a prescription and they walk out the door and they can't afford to get the prescription. So those are some of the ways we're trying to help influence the areas that we can influence, even though we may not be able to necessarily lower the price of groceries at the store.
I just want to go back to your comment about the raising tax on corporations making profits. And I read a cute article at lunch in the National Post called "No Profits, Please. We are Canadian," and it basically spoke to the notion of wealth redistribution, which again we know has been attempted policy for 50 years and has failed. So is suddenly taxing the populist notion of taxing a business because it makes profit when that's what its purpose is for, is that really solving the problem on a long term? Or is it just great because it's popular today?
Well, there's nothing wrong with profits, right? I mean, profits are needed to drive a lot of the programs that we as government are able to generate. I think when you get people like Warren Buffett saying that he's not taxed enough, or the first year of the pandemic where Canada's billionaires made $80 billion in profit in just the first year, and I haven't seen what the increase is in the second year. So, I think, Dan, you and Scott pay your fair share of taxes. I do as well. So we're not saying that you should be paying more. What we're saying is that corporations, so as I said earlier, we've seen oil companies, grocery stores declare record profits just in the past weeks, along with those companies that made a lot of money during COVID. We're saying they need to pay their fair share. We're like our platform freezes taxes for low and middle income people. For your income's up to $200,000. We're saying for the first 4 years, we're not going to increase your taxes. We're saying people who make more need to pay their fair share, because people making less than 200,000 have been paying their fair share. And trickle down economics, we've been waiting from the 1980s for that to happen. And I don't have a $1 billion yacht yet, and I'm sure that the two of you don't have your $1 billion yacht yet either. So
neither do I. On that note, unfortunately we have to go to a short break. Please stay tuned. We're visiting with Andy Kroeker, the NDP candidate for Elgin-Middlesex-London in the June 2nd election. We'll be right back. Welcome back to In the Know. I'm your host, Dan Reith, and we continue with our series on visiting with the candidates for our upcoming provincial election on June 2nd. In this episode, we're visiting with Andy Kroeker from the NDP candidate for Elgin-Middlesex-London. Andy, I want to talk about the NDP's platform on education and fixing education in schools. And right off, it says hire a specific number, we're going to hire 20,000 new teachers and education workers. Like I asked of our Liberal candidate, whose party also had a set number they're going to hire, where are we going to find these 20,000 teachers? Where's the NDP going to find 20,000 teachers, education workers to hire? The total number of licensed teachers right now is less than 2% unemployed. We have our universities haven't turned out that many teachers in probably the last 15 years at least. Where are we going to find 20,000 to fill the gap?
Well, it's going to be a challenge, and certainly we know that there are a lot of areas across the province that are going to require additional people to be hired. So certainly we are going to be also looking to see whether we have foreign trained teachers who are able to easily step into the role here. Certainly my son actually went to New Zealand for Teachers College and is back here. He's not sure if he wants to be a teacher or not, but we know that a lot of Canadians have also gone overseas to get their accreditation as well, and have come back here and have been unable to find jobs. So I think it's partly working with the current, for example, here in London, Althouse College, trying to find ways to help them increase their capacity. They've done some in terms of trying to speed up the pipeline for people. So I think we're wanting to look at alternatives like that as well.
In terms of the class sizes, is that sort of a cart horse thing? Because the platform says cap at 24, which means we need more teachers, but we don't have more teachers. How can we cap at 24? At what point, where's that line set where we're going to actually have the right number of teachers where we can fulfill that promise of a class cap at 24?
It's like most things in life, right? You set a target and you try to work towards it. So that's what our commitment is, to try to get to there. We know it's going to be difficult, and it's going to be hard to have a target like that across the province, and especially in rural communities such as where I work in West Lorne. So that's going to take some finessing, but it gives the teachers' colleges, it gives the school boards an idea from a planning perspective, and allows them to do some more long-range planning in terms of what their labor force needs are going to be.
Let's talk about healthcare, an area near and dear to your heart.
Mm-hmm.
What is the NDP going to do to fix healthcare in Ontario? I know that's a loaded question. Where are we going to start?
Well, there's certainly a lot to address. So, for example, where I work at the West Elgin Community Health Centre, our budgets haven't really been increased for about 12 years. So we've been struggling to keep our operations going and trying to keep our great staff retained and recruited. So the NDP is committed to, for example, that sector, a 7% increase in operating funds and 11% increase in salaries, just to allow people to do the great work they need to do. Similar to your earlier question, we know that we need more nurses, and we know that we need more personal support workers. And so we will be providing incentives to help attract people into those areas. We're also, as I see, of foreign trained professionals in healthcare to actually come here and work in their chosen field. So they've moved to Canada, they moved to Ontario, they moved to St. Thomas as a physician or as a nurse, and they come here and they have these roadblocks that prevent them from doing the work that they know and love. So we are committed to removing those roadblocks where we can, and we're also committed to spending more money on home care, because we know people want to be taken care of at home when they are sick. So even just last night in St. Thomas, I was out visiting with a in their 80s, because he can't get personal support worker support, right? So, and they don't want to go into long-term care home. They would rather stay at home. So one of the things I was saying to him is we know how much time and energy they spend to support their parents. So we're actually offering a $400 a month credit to people who actually take care of others. So there's a lot also in terms of trying to get hospitals built in the pipe with green lights for some of those occupancies. In my sector, which again is near and dear to my heart, community health centers in St. Thomas, poor Judith has been trying for years to get a new building, and we're committed that at least 20 new community health centers will be built across the province. So again, it's a combination of operating funds and capital funds. And to me, the biggest concern I have in my current role is health human resources. So I am really concerned. My team is burnt out from 2 years of COVID. They've gone above and beyond the call of duty. They've had Bill 124, which has frozen their wages at 1%. And I can't even give them a 1% increase because the government's not giving me $0 to increase them. So we need to do better to take care of our healthcare workers and give them the respect and that they've given us over the past 2 years.
Let's talk about environment, getting Ontario to net zero. I see on the platform that carbon pricing is an important tool to fight climate change. Yet we have a federal carbon tax, and we see what that's done to the cost of electricity, natural gas to heat our homes, and certainly gasoline. Apart from pandemic and supply chain issues that have also contributed to a big spike there. But what's the process we're going to get us to this net zero without adding more cost to life?
So we are proposing that we move to a new cap and trade model in our platform. So that's part of our green democratic New Deal. So it's very ambitious. It shows that we are committed to taking the action that is needed at all levels of government about what we're planning to do to address climate change. And it hasn't really happened. So I'll give you an example of some of the challenges. So even out where I work, so in Dutton, last year they had a major storm that ripped the roof off the community center, and they had 6 of their bridges on the Trans-Canada Trail got washed away. And in our building, we've had flooding in our basement, and a lot of our neighbors have flooding in the basement. So the reality is it's happening now. And so what we're suggesting is we're going to move towards a cap and trade model that will target initially the biggest producers of carbon and provide relief to the average person, so that they're not paying it directly. Supporting the movement towards a full electric vehicle fleet provincially. So the province has a lot of vehicles, and we would be moving, accelerating the purchase of electric vehicles, hopefully ones built in Ontario by 2030, with the intent that a full electric fleet, or that by roughly about 2035, most vehicles bought in Ontario would be electric. So we know what that means is we need to roll out a greater infrastructure to build, to have charging stations. So we're also planning to provide people with interest-free loans to allow them to put solar panels on their house, to put charging stations in their home for their vehicle. And we're also going to be working with industry. This is actually something that's also near and dear to my heart. It's something that I've been trying to work on for the past 30 years as well. And I think we need to seriously take this issue seriously. The current government set us back for the past 4 years, and they don't really seem to have a plan for the next 4 years if we are to really meet our target carbon goals.
As I think I mentioned at the outset, when in reading all the platforms for all the parties in preparation for our interviews, I would say that the NDP is certainly the most comprehensive that I've read. How would you define in 3 words or less the essence of the platform of the NDP for the upcoming election?
3 words or less. Healthcare is I'll take healthcare as 1 word. Affordability is a 2nd, and seniors would be a 3rd.
Okay. I want to ask you briefly about Andrea Horwath, who some have said this is her 4th kick at the can. If she doesn't succeed in becoming premier, the party needs to look for new and different leadership. What's your thought on that?
Well, I think she's ready to be premier. I think she brings a wealth of experience to the table. If you look at the last election, the NDP was 1st or 2nd in 100 out of the 124 ridings. She came here to St. Thomas and announced the mental health program at Central Community Health Center, and I was there at that announcement and was very proud of it. Then we went to Johnny's Diner in Elmer and had a good lunch, and she's coming back to West Lorne on Thursday. So if you want to go down to my community health center on Thursday and see her. So I think it's tough being a leader at the best of times. I know in healthcare, I'm a leader and I've been there for 12 years, and some people might say it's time for me to go. So it's to be blunt, it's tough to be a female leader in politics, right? I think they get held to a different standard. So I'm quite, I've just met her the once. I'm going to meet her again on Thursday. I'm quite proud that she's my leader. I think she She represents the people who don't have a voice in our province, and I think she has done a pretty good job of trying to hold this government accountable, because I think this government has done a lot of things that that I certainly am not in favor of, nor would our party be.
We're down to our last 45 seconds. I want to give that to you, Andy, to tell the voters of Elgin-Middlesex-London why Andy Kroeker is the right choice on June 2nd.
Well, I think I've been showing that I've been speaking for the people of Elgin for the past 12 years. As executive director in the West Elgin Community Health Center, I've been working on the Elgin Community Drug and Alcohol Strategy. I've been working on the Elgin Ontario Health Team. I've been advocating for the homelessness challenge in terms of affordable housing in West Elgin and across Elgin. So I've been there for 12 plus years, plus 2 at the Elgin County Board of Education in a previous life. So I like to think that Elgin blood beats through my heart, and I drive 55 kilometers through Elgin every day to get to work. So I think I would do you proud, and would certainly be a strong advocate and ally for the people of Elgin.
Very good. Thank you very much, Andy, for joining us and taking your time today. Thank you, everyone, for watching. If you want more information on the NDP platform and/or Andy Kroeker, go to ontariondp.ca /platform, and it's all right there. On behalf of Rogers and myself, thank you very much, Andy, for your time, and best of luck in the campaign. And we look forward to seeing the results on June 2nd. Thank you for watching. You are in the know. Take care.